Hi gang, and welcome back to my channel. On a recent visit to the Magic Kingdom, I was riding my trusty dune buggy through the spooky halls of the Haunted Mansion. While minding my own afterlife, bam! Inspiration hit me like a hitchhiking ghost on a mission. As I floated past the graveyard scene, I whipped out my trusty sketchbook because who doesn't bring art supplies to the parks? I started doodling what can only be described as a Halloween graveyard prop that looked like it's been dying to be noticed. Literally. We're talking XPS foam for the body, an EPS foam noggin with a plastic derby, because even the undead deserve good headwear, and a sculpted EPS foam chest piece that screams, "I haunt in style." It's spooky. It's stylish. It's somewhere between classic Halloween meets a Victorian ghost with a day job. So grab your shovels, maybe a flashlight, and definitely an alibi, because we're digging into this build like it's hiding the last piece of Halloween candy. Oh, and try not to wake anything that missed its doom buggy. We begin our Halloween haunt by outlining the area to be cut around for the derby. With my trusty marker in hand, I circle the head carefully, marking where the hat will be placed. Once I was happy with the results, it was time to give it a close shave. Off camera, I made a foam core jig to hold our derby level and in place. To give it a better structure, I used Great Stuff spray foam insulation. It's applied with a long plastic nozzle and expands as a liquid polyurethane, filling in all the crevices. After it cures, it will have formed a thick, rigid base, perfect for giving your hat a solid place to sit.
Several days later.
After several days left to cure, the foam has solidified nicely. Now it's time to shape it by removing the excess. I start by plucking off the loose bits, then carefully switch to a long utility knife blade to begin sculpting it into form, slow and steady, like trimming up for a ghostly gala. Back to our foam head, it's time to give it a close shave. I use blue painter's tape to mark off the area to be trimmed, giving myself a nice clean guide to follow. Once the hot wire cutter is heated up and ready for action, I carefully align the head and make the cut, taking just enough off the top to give our ghostly gent the perfect spot to tip his hat, eternally in style. Off camera, I created a template for the chest area and traced it onto the EPS foam block that'll become the sculpted bust. I carefully outlined the shape, then flipped it to mirror the other side, because even in the afterlife, symmetry matters. Using a hot wire cutter, I join both foam blocks temporarily together and carefully follow the contours of the bust, letting the heat do the slicing. Patience is key here. Push too fast, and that wire might snap faster than a vampire seeing daylight. Now that the front of the bust has taken shape, it's time to tackle the side contours. Using a marker, I freehand the curves by eye, aiming for a smooth, natural look. After that step, I separate the front and back foam blocks and use the hot wire cutter to trim the excess from the back piece. Next, I angle the wire to make a secondary cut on the back piece, creating a slight taper so it fits more naturally against the curve of the neck and shoulders. This helps the back section align smoothly with the front, giving the overall bust a more seamless and realistic profile. To finish off the back foam block and add structural support, I'll cut a 3/4 inch hole to allow a wooden dowel to run vertically from the base all the way up and into the foam head, keeping everything aligned and securely in place. Since my hot wire cutter isn't tall enough to handle the full piece, I'll need to split the front module of the bust into two sections, left and right. To ensure a perfectly symmetrical cut, I use a leftover piece from the original bust cut as a guide. To attach the head to the hat, I used more spray foam insulation and secured it with blue painter's tape to hold everything in place while it cures overnight. To keep it level during the process, I'll set it on the same jig I used earlier.
The next morning.
Once both pieces were securely in place, I used my rasp to shape the brim on the derby. Next, I'll use 100 grit sandpaper to smooth out and blend the vertical parting line seam. To give dear Otis his organic stone-like face, I'll be using a large lava rock because nothing says detail work like nature's own sculpting tool. Here's what good old Otis looks like after taking a beating from the lava rock. Nicely weathered and full of character. Now, I'll concentrate on texturing the top of his derby by applying Mod Podge generously with a brush, ensuring it reaches into every crevice for full coverage. Immediately after the previous step, I'll recycle the shavings from scraping the derby brim with the rasp, sprinkling them generously over the still wet surface. Afterward, I'll insert the structural dowel into the bottom of the foam head to make it easier to handle while I brush on another coat of Mod Podge, sealing and protecting it from the elements. And here's Otis after his luxurious Mod Podge facial treatment. He'll be drying overnight while he basks in his beauty and contemplates his new look.
1 day later.
The following day, this is what he looks like: dry, sealed, and feeling stiff. He also learned a new trick, his impression of The Exorcist. Pretty neat, huh? Now, we shift our attention to creating the base that will support our dearly departed Otis Blake. For the main structure, I'll be using 1-inch XPS foam. The panels will be marked for cutting with the hot wire cutter, and a straight edge will ensure clean, precise lines. Then I'll mark all of the cross cuts. Using the fence on my hot wire cutter, I align the piece to be trimmed and make precise cuts along the marked lines. And now, trimming the cross cuts. Here are all the panels, prepped and ready for assembly. To add extra strength, I'll be using bamboo skewers, and for some added texture, my trusty large lava rock will do the job. We start by pressing the lava rock into the foam panels to create a natural, organic texture. This helps transform the foam surface, giving it the look of aged, weathered stone. After pressing it firmly from all sides, the foam now has a natural, stone-like texture with plenty of character. Next, I'll repeat the process on the remaining panels to keep the look consistent throughout the build. To assemble the base of our monument, I start by gluing the angled bottom frame using hot melt glue. To ensure the corner is properly aligned, I use the carpenter's square to check for accuracy. For added stability, I reinforce the joints with bamboo skewers. Once the bottom frame was securely in place, I attached the sub-panel to the base. To keep everything aligned, I made sure to label each panel accordingly. Then, I gently press down to ensure a strong bond and proper adhesion. Now to give it some character. In order to bring this monument to quote-unquote life, I'll be using self-adhesive foam letters. To begin, I place a strip of blue painter's tape to follow as a guide and use a printed template to locate each letter into position. And here's the finished plaque that will headline the details of our dearly departed friend. It reads, "Here lies Otis Blake, who stepped on the gas instead of the brake. Rest in pieces, 1876 to 1921. To continue assembling the base, I glue on 4 corner blocks to act as guides, helping to secure the upright walls in place. Starting with the front panel, spread a bead of hot melt glue along the edges and press fit into place. To ensure it's square with the base, I use a machinist square to check for accuracy. With all 4 walls securely in place, I add 4 foam corner braces to the interior to reinforce the structure and further secure the base. To protect the foam from the elements and prepare it for the top coat, I'll apply Mod Podge to seal everything. I'll be using a 1-inch brush to apply a thin coat to all surfaces. To finish off the base and give the piece more character, I use my hot wire cutter to shave down some XPS foam trim pieces to 2 1/8 lengths, using them to neatly hide the exposed corner seams. Then I rotate the previous cut to split it in half. Afterwards, I finish the one section of trim and cut it to its proper height. Once all 8 foam pieces are cut and textured on all surfaces with the lava rock, it's time to join them together using hot melt glue. Don't worry about getting a perfect corner, since it will conform to shape once it is attached to the base. After gluing all the corners together, I noticed the seam was quite visible, not ideal. To fix it, I'll use my lava rock again to blend the joint and create a more seamless finish. I start by firmly holding the foam corner piece in one hand, and with a twisting motion, I use the other hand to press the lava rock and blend the joint together seamlessly. This creates a more uniform finish on the angled corner piece. To remove any loose pieces, I scrape the lava rock gently across the surface. And there you have it. To attach the corner trim, I'll use my hot melt glue gun and press each corner in place, effectively concealing the corner joint at the base wall. This is the internal construction of the base. You'll notice the center hole placement at the bottom for our structural dowel to sit in, which will maintain the entire monument vertically and in place. I test-fitted the top cap of the base to see how it looked, and here's the finished base with all the elements in place. All corner trim have been permanently sealed with Mod Podge to ensure longevity. The edges also received special treatment since they absorbed most of the Mod Podge. Now we focus our attention back to the chest, back, and shoulder areas of the bust. Using a marker, I drew a freehand curve to outline where the sides and shoulders will be shaped. This line will act as the cutting guide. With my utility knife fully extended, I carefully follow the marked curve to cut out the desired shape. This is how the piece looks like following the initial rough cutting stage. At this stage, I'll switch to a rasp to begin smoothing and shaping the contours, helping to define the overall look of the bust. To refine the bust even further, I'll use 100 grit sandpaper. This will help smooth out any sharp edges left by the rasp and create a more polished shape. For the next phase, I'll sketch out the clothing, which will serve as my cutting guide to sculpt the foam bust into shape. Since dearly departed Otis was quite the dapper gentleman, I'm going all out with a jacket and a ruffled tie, something that practically screams Roaring Twenties. I'll be using my utility knife again with the blade fully extended to carve out the shapes I just drew. Be careful not to cut too deeply, otherwise you might end up biting off more than you can chew. To smooth out the surfaces, I'll return to my 100 grit sandpaper and gently round off the sharp corners around the bust. This step really helps the details stand out and adds dimension to the piece. For a bit of weathering, I'll turn to my lava rock once again. This will help unify the bust with the rest of the monument, giving it that worn, weathered look. To protect the piece before applying the final finish, I'll coat the entire surface with a generous layer of Mod Podge. To add structure to the piece, I'll use a 3/4 inch maple wood dowel. When glued to the base, it will provide internal support, connecting the bottom of the base to the top, where the EPS foam head will rest. Next, I'll apply a generous amount of hot melt glue to the top edges of the base. Then, I'll quickly slide the cap over the dowel and use 2 machinist squares to ensure it's perfectly plumb. I'll need to work fast, as once the glue sets, no further adjustments will be possible. Off camera, I dug through my Greeble collection and found the bottom half of a plastic flower pot and a medicine bottle. These pieces were the perfect size and shape to elevate the bust onto the pedestal. After gluing them to the base, I applied Mod Podge and sprinkled on some leftover EPS foam shavings for added texture. To attach the foam chest piece to the pedestal base, I coat the wooden dowel with a generous amount of hot melt glue. Then, I slide the foam piece down the wooden pole, align it to face the front, and secure it in place until the glue hardens. And now, the moment I've been waiting for, it's time to attach Dear Otis's head. To give it a sophisticated look, I've added a stylish neck collar made from a thin piece of XPS foam to cover the neck seam. To seal any gaps, I'll be using DAP's white premium caulk for a watertight bond, ensuring the piece remains weather-resistant for years of Halloween haunts. After applying it, I spread it evenly with a small foam brush and added a touch of class by adding a faux 1920s-style tie using large blobs of caulk. The same goes for the inside brim of the derby. I use the identical technique on the pedestal base to ensure it matches seamlessly with the rest of the monument. And there you have it, the freshly detailed monument dedicated to our dearly departed Otis Blake. I'll set it aside in a safe spot to fully cure for about 2 to 3 days before applying the stucco finish to seal the piece. Wait! I almost forgot, no look is complete without a carnation on the lapel. Off camera, I dipped a silk flower in Mod Podge and let it bake in the Florida sun for a day. Now it's perfectly sealed against the elements. I'll drill a pilot hole and glue it in place with my glue gun. See you in a couple of days, Otis.
3 days later.
To seal and add texture to the monument, I created a cement-like mixture of equal parts, which hardens to form a stucco-like finish. This is about the consistency you will need, not too thick and not too runny. Using a 2-inch brush, apply a generous layer of stucco over the entire surface of the monument. Make sure to get into every nook and crevice to ensure a solid watertight seal. Continue spreading the mixture evenly, but be careful not to get it on your clothes or other surfaces. Once it is completely saturated, set aside to cure. After a week, it will form a thick, hard shell that seals the XPS foam, preparing it for finishing.
1 eternity later.
Once the stucco has fully cured, I'll apply Rust-Oleum's professional gray primer spray to protect the finish from the elements, ensuring it lasts through many seasons of haunting. To accentuate the raised details of the monument, I'll gently dry brush each section, creating the illusion of authentic faux stone texture. Finally, to make the lettering stand out even more, I'll dry brush them. This will add depth and dimension for greater visibility. Now, for my favorite part, weathering. To really bring the effect to life, I'll be using a spray bottle filled with thinned down black paint to add depth and realism. I'll also keep a clean water spray bottle on hand to tone things down if the coverage gets too heavy. Throughout the process, I'll be wiping and adjusting as needed to ensure the finish stays balanced and natural looking. The final touch to bring this cemetery monument to life is the careful application of dirt and grime, focusing around the base where the stone meets the earth. I layer it in crevices and along edges to create a natural weathered appearance, adding depth and authenticity to the piece. To bring a touch of realism to our piece, I'll lightly mist the base with a rich, deep green mist where the monument meets the grass, creating a natural, seamless transition. Once I'm happy with the final look, I'll seal it with Rust-Oleum's Universal Clear Dead Flat Top Coat Spray. And let me tell you, this finish will complement our theme perfectly. You couldn't ask for a better finish. Seriously, the spray says it all, dead flat. And now, we proudly present this glorious monument dedicated to the late, great gear-grinding speed demon, Otis Blake. A man who in the year 1921 took one look at a Model T along with some high-octane whiskey, cranked it like a lawnmower from hell and said, "Let's see what this baby can do." Otis believed brakes were for the weak, seatbelts were black magic, and stop signs were optional. On his final day on Earth, he hit 63 miles per hour downhill, through a herd of cows, and created the first known sonic boom with a derby hat. His final ride? A flaming detour through a chicken coop, a marching band, and legend has it one highly pressurized barrel of illegal moonshine in the trunk, which exploded so hard upon impact that it sent dear Otis into the middle of next week and beyond. Rest in spectacular alcohol-induced pieces, Otis. And this time, as you rip through the heavenly skies in your rickety tin can jalopy with wings, try not to crash into the pearly gates, and for the love of flammable liquids, find that darn brake, you magnificent lunatic.